name's Gregg Treinish. I'm the founder and executive director of Adventurers and Scientists for Conservation. We're going to talk a little bit today about our organization, citizen science in general, and how you can get involved. And I'll start with a little bit of a background and then kind of move into the different facets of the organization. So I had the original feeling like I wanted to do more with my time outside when I was on the Appalachian Trail. So this goes from Georgia to Maine. It's about 2,200 miles. And the photo you see here is taken somewhere in Pennsylvania. The running joke on the Appalachian Trail is that folks come out, Boy Scouts come out every morning and sharpen those rocks. And the reason is just because they're so sharp everywhere. I had fallen about 15 times on these rocks and bloodied my ankles. It was raining. It had been raining for days. And I fell on these rocks yet another time and picked one up and chucked it at a tree and took a giant gash out of that tree. I felt like the lowest person on earth in that moment. I was out here for 6 months. I was walking across the eastern part of the U.S., but to what avail? There was no benefit to people. There was no benefit to the environment. And I just felt completely awful for doing that. Well, I stood up and I did wind up keep walking. I walked for 3 more months and finished the AT, but I vowed in that moment that I would make a difference with my time outside, that there wouldn't be that selfish feeling with me anymore. So I went and worked in wilderness therapy for a while, taking kids who had alcohol and drug problems and family issues out into the woods, and spent quite a bit of time with them there. Worked for a while, but didn't really find my calling. So then in 2006, I started this. So beginning in Ecuador, just because of the political climate of the north in Colombia, at the base of the Cotopaxi volcano you saw there, I walked down the spine of the continent, staying as close as I could to the Andes range, finishing eventually down in Tierra del Fuego at the island of Tierra del Fuego, and at the southernmost point of that island is a small little lighthouse, which you can see the shadow of there. I turned my slide a little early, but you can see that it was 667 days that we were out there, just under 22 months. We covered 5 countries from Ecuador, Peru, Chile, Argentina, and Bolivia. And we guessed the trip to be about 7,800 miles. It's really tough to tell an exact mileage. We had a GPS with us for about 2/3 of the way, and we could only turn it on for 2 or 3 times a day. So we have straight lines in between those points, and we guess it to be somewhere between 7,500 and 8,500 miles. So I mentioned that, we wanted to be doing more with our time. Our goal on this trip was to learn about sustainability. We wanted to learn the lessons of a people who were living more harmoniously with the landscape than we do here. And we wanted to really bring the lessons that we learned back here. And we did. We learned a ton. We've been lecturing or speaking in the U.S. ever since our return in 2008. And we saw things like solar cookers, and we saw things like solar panels in the middle of the Bolivian pampa. And so sharing those lessons, I think, has been really important for us. I still didn't find my calling in that sustainability lesson, though. And so having been exposed to things like this throughout our journey, these are vicuña out on the Chilean pampa, having seen things like the rare boa.
Crikey, we've just encountered here deep in the Amazon basin one of the rare boa. Crikey, what a find, mate. Look at him, isn't he beautiful? Oh.
So that was deep in the Amazon, a place called Pacaya Samira. Here's another little clip from there.
Yep, that's a flying monkey.
So we were exposed to this amazing flora and fauna along the way, and I knew that I loved it, but I didn't understand it, and I really very badly wanted to get a better sense of what was around me and how it interacted with each other. So I came to Montana State University immediately after this journey and began a degree in ecology and evolution. Well, I finished that degree in 1 year, and had also simultaneously started working as a field tech. So I worked on an owl study out in California. I worked on the Fort Peck Reservoir in Montana. I worked tracking lynx and wolverine and grizzly bears here locally in Bozeman for Wild Things Unlimited. And I very quickly realized that these things that I was doing were not only making a big difference, but at the same time were very easy to do and learn. I wasn't a rocket scientist. Here I was with very minimal training, and I was making the difference that I wanted to make out there. And I knew that others, having talked to other folks, I did win the National Geographic Adventure of the Year Award in 2008 for the Andes Trek. And so through those connections, I started talking with other adventurers and very quickly realized that my selfish feeling was a shared one. Well, because of my passion for adventure, my love of the sciences, and my understanding that there were folks who could make that same difference, I created Adventurers and Scientists for Conservation. And very simply put, our mission is to connect adventure and science. It really couldn't be simpler. We exist because as you look around the world and you go through the oceans and you cross over Africa, wherever it might be, there's still places that we need to know more about. I love this quote from Aldo Leopold at the bottom, that only those who know the most about it can really appreciate how little we know about it. And I find that to be very true. The more scientists I've come across, the more information that we've been requested to get. And so at the same time that there's this tremendous need around the world, there are thousands and actually tens of thousands of people who go outside every single day. They're boaters, they're climbers, they're mountaineers, they're skiers, they're kayakers, they're the people who are hiking across deserts, they're swimming or diving rather, and they want to do more for the places that they visit. Well, there hasn't been an easy way to do that previously, but now there is. Now they can make that difference that they want to make. And so we have two main ways that folks can get involved in our organization, and I'm going to focus first on the partnerships between our athletes and our scientists. So if you come to our website, it's adventureandscience.org or adventurescience.org, both work. You can come here and click on any one of the continents. Well, if you click on North America, you'll get to this page, and each continent has its own page. In the upper left-hand corner, we can filter by sport, but this is a brief list of highlighted trips. And so we rotate these different projects through our website. You can see that we've put little icons for which sports they make sense for. We have everything from cetacean sightings to repeat glacial photography. People are out on road bikes around the world tracking roadkill observations for us. We've collected ice worms, rare plant documentations with the California Native Plant Society. Out on the East Coast, we're looking at banded gulls. So there's really no limit to the types of projects we can do. There's really no limit to the number of projects we can do. So once somebody's come to our website, they've decided on a project that they want to do, we'll get here. So we have our scientist on the right of my screen there. We've got our adventure in the middle, and that's me on the left. And basically, we'll serve as the translator and the go-between for whatever project it is. And so we're going to help that adventurer understand the protocols, and at the same time, we're going to limit their expectations. A lot of times, adventurers are notorious for thinking big, right? That's why they do the adventures they do. So part of our job is to temper those expectations to make sure what we're talking about doing is actually feasible. At the same time, the scientist is often speaking in language that the adventurer really doesn't understand, and we're really good at being that go-between. We'll continue to be involved with both the scientist and the explorer throughout these expeditions and making sure that data collection is going smoothly, that the protocols that have been established are really being followed. A lot of times we're even able to have our adventurers meet up in person with our scientists, which we really love, but when it's not possible, we'll go through the protocols on these Skype calls, and then the adventurer can go and practice on his or her own. So recent highlights and the successes of these projects. We recently sent 80 people as pika researchers on the Pacific Crest Trail. This goes from Mexico to Canada along the west coast. 18 people on the Continental Divide Trail, same deal, Mexico to Canada. And then in the Himalayas, we've had more than 10 people go out. And these are all numbers as of last year, so we're starting our field season again this year. and these numbers will grow exponentially. They're looking at pika as indicator species of climate change, where they're distributed. You can see on our website some of the information and how this gets placed. We do partner with iNaturalist.org on a lot of this stuff. You'll see a research grade on the right-hand side there under each of those observations. And that's because we have independent researchers who are able to come into these projects as moderators. They can verify those locations, not only based on where they're located, but also based on the photos that we have people take. So we really try to be very good about boosting things to research grade only when it's a very clear photo and a very clear location. Secondary success, I mentioned our iceworm project before. So we've collected iceworms from Roman Dial from Alaska Pacific University up on remote glaciers. We've done it not only in the Chugach Range, but in about 5 other ranges between the Pacific Northwest and up to and through Alaska. Pretty amazing opportunity for mountaineers who are visiting these remote locations. Roman Dial happens to be one of the better athletes in the world and adventurers in the world as well, but he can't get everywhere. So time, funding, and the skill level are really the limiting factors that we know a lot of researchers.
We've had a great time. We had a fantastic trip, and it's just kind of fun to be able to put some science in the mix and get some of these iceworms collected for some studies. So you should be able to see them right in the bottom there.
Yeah, we got them.
So one of our adventurers, this guy actually had the goal of summiting a peak. He didn't achieve that objective, but said that this really saved his experience. This really saved his trip. Another highlight was the collection of the highest known plant life on Earth for Mount Everest, up at 22,000 feet. So we shattered the known altitude record by about 5,000 feet here. And Damian Benegas is a climber with the North Face team. He and his brother Willie seasonally go up to Everest. They've climbed Aconcagua. They've climbed all the major peaks that you can think of. And this is a video of the actual collection. So a lot of times our adventurers are just this vessel for collecting things like this. Obviously, Damian isn't going to be doing this hardcore science that you're going to do in the lab once you get these samples back. So that's a moss that was picked up there at 22,000 feet, and we sent it to University of Washington. At the time, Rusty Rodriguez was there. He's no longer there, but it wasn't the moss so much that we were interested in, but rather the fungi that live symbiotically with that moss. And so the researcher thinks that, you know, because we found similar fungi living symbiotically with plants in the extremophiles in Yellowstone National Park, in deserts, the real goal here is to look at using this symbiotically with agricultural material and be able to grow agricultural material in extreme environments without having to GMO those foods. So pretty important, pretty amazing. All around the world, we've sent more than 1,000 athletes to collect data for more than 100 different science projects, and we've saved the conservation and science communities millions of dollars by doing so. In addition to simply sending, I did the same thing yesterday. 4 new species of diatoms have been collected, actual new species to science. We've collected microbes in addition to that plant life up at 23,000 feet. We've sent teams kayaking from Seattle to Alaska, more than 34 ongoing projects we have at any given time, 27 plankton samples coming out of the Arctic, coyote scat collections. We worked with the researcher there who was looking at hybridization between wolves and coyotes. And we learned a ton about the fact that they're actually far more hybridized than we ever realized before. So now to my journey, in addition to being in the office all the time, I actually get to go out on these journeys as well. I recently got back from the Ring of Darhad expedition up in the Darhad northernmost region of Mongolia, right next to Lake Hovsgol there. And our goal was really to focus on these guys, the wolverine. As many of you know, they're here in the Northern Rockies as well. And so there was a lot of comparative analysis that could happen based on a study over there. But mainly, we just knew nothing about that population over there. It had been studied only in really surveys, and a few pelts had yielded some DNA analysis. We were very successful in our mission. We went over there and skied for 23 straight days through faceted snow on off ice, and we picked up 27 sets of wolverine tracks, collecting 33 scat samples or hair samples as well. In addition to our wild success with collecting wolverines, looking at the haplotype, which we believe is actually really similar to the California population of wolverine that was previously there, rather than the Canadian population. We also picked up a snow leopard track, which was pretty shocking to us. The IUCN lists this very edge of our route as a probable extant population, and we were super excited to be able to find that snow leopard track. Here's a shot of that snow leopard track now. Super excited to find it. You'll notice the super round print, definitely cat-like, really up high on the tundra. So I mentioned that there's two main sides of the organizations, the partnerships between adventurers and scientists, and then we also have our citizen science programs or our guided outings. And so I'll focus on these now. We work with a number of different populations, whether it's students, military, veterans, agencies, nonprofits who want to engage the community, universities, or outing clubs or community groups. We'll definitely work with all of these different entities. With students, we recently had an amazing project where we went out with kids from West Oakland Middle School. These were 7th graders who we brought up to the Desolation Wilderness. Desolation Wilderness is just above Lake Tahoe. We brought researcher Joseph Stewart from the University of Nevada, Reno with us, and taught these kids how to survey for, identify pica, sign their scat, their hay piles, and these kids were responsible for the first locations to actually be documented in the Desolation Wilderness, which was pretty shocking but super exciting. We did have NPR come with us on this trip. The kids got to take over the microphone and be the reporters, and they had never been out camping before. They had never been in the wilderness before. Such a tremendous opportunity for these kids, and really an exciting project for us. Out on the Olympic National Forest, we recently conducted a pine marten project. We were looking at the coastal pine marten, which is actually threatened in this area, and partially due to our work, partially due to a lot of other pre-existing work, they're now taking steps to list these species regionally. So I'll let NPR, who joined us on this trip as well, we were on All Things Considered, do a little talking here for us.
It's about 25 degrees on a clear Saturday morning when Gregg Treinish leads a small group of volunteers into the Olympic National Forest.
Notice the track off to your left here. See if you can figure out what's using this little run here.
Treinish is the Executive Director of Adventurers and Scientists for Conservation, a nonprofit that puts avid outdoors people to work gathering data for scientists around the world. This group will be setting up motion-sensing cameras in some of the most inaccessible parts of the forest in the hopes of getting a shot of a marten. But there's a very slim chance that'll happen. There have been 3 marten sightings here in the past 25 years. Biologists think this is because there isn't as much old-growth forest along the coast, and because it's still legal to trap martens here. Okay, so what's a marten, you might be wondering? Here are some shots taken in the Lassen National Forest in California's Sierra Mountains. Katie Moriarty sent them to me. She's been studying martens for 10 years and is doing a PhD at Oregon State University. Katie had a remote camera setup, just like the ones the volunteers in Olympic National Forest are putting in, only hers shoots video too. Here's one gem she recorded. These are sassy, charismatic animals, and in most of their range in Canada and the northern part of the U.S., they're doing okay, just not here in the Olympics. But if scientists can't prove that, then the marten won't be listed for protection under the Endangered Species Act. The forest
the recruiting, the preparation, the training, all of the steps that you would traditionally have to do in order to get a field tech or to get people out in the field collecting data, we can really take care of all that stuff for you. In this case, we were able to recruit backcountry mountaineers and skiers, and we were able to get these camera locations far deeper into the forest than otherwise would have happened. And you can see our guy was pretty successful there. Persistence does pay off. In addition to the bobcats, we got all kinds of coyote, we had fox, we had mountain lion. I did add the sound effects. We had one mountain lion come repeatedly, and then we had groups of 3 come. So really exciting. This is beaver carcass nailed to the tree, problem animal in the Olympic National Forest, so they were removed and taken care of, and instead of them just going to waste, we got to use them. So I mentioned that we were looking for marten primarily. A secondary species of interest was the fisher. You do see a fisher track that we saw here. And then we even got photos of fishers, so we were super, super excited about this. They were reintroduced to that ecosystem in about the early 2000s, and they had since lost track of a lot of these animals, and so enabling them to refine and know that they're using these outer edges of the Olympic National Forest is more than exciting for those researchers. So all around the world, they're bikers, they're ocean lovers, they're people collecting diatoms in high mountain lakes. They're anybody who has had that same selfish feeling are volunteering free of charge to get you data. It's an amazing opportunity for you. Again, if you don't have the time, if you don't have the resources, or you don't have the skill level to get to these remote places, come to us. We'll post one of your projects on our website, and we'll start getting you people. If you're more interested in organizing a guided outing with us, we'd love to explore that. We do have the desire to engage incoming freshmen through universities and get them out on these backpacking trips with us, collecting data, working with biology departments of different universities. We'd like to continue our work with younger students, with military veterans as well. In addition to all of this, there was a film that was just released yesterday called Gregg, Treinish, and Move Shake Story. I hope you'll visit moveshake.org. You can also watch the film on our website, which is adventureandscience.org. Really look forward to all of your questions. Because you're not watching this live, feel free to write to adventureandscience.org. You can write to Gregg at adventureandscience.org or info@adventureandscience.org, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks so much for your time.